Today, I will be having a conversation with two very special people, two very dear friends of mine. They've been my friends for more than 10 years, my fellow activists. They actually need no introduction whatsoever. Um, so I am delighted to welcome Zainah Anwar and Marina Mahathir.
Hi everyone. Hi Ambi. Great to be here. Hi Marina.
Hi Ambi. Thanks for having me.
Hi Marina. Hi Zainah. Okay, we have to go down memory lane a little bit, actually, or a lot. Now, Zai, I'm going to ask you about your background. You are a Johor thoroughbred, as I understand it, born and bred in Johor, and you're very interestingly a very naughty child. I understand that your teachers described you this way: too high-spirited, too playful, too talkative, too naughty. That's Zainah Anwar, okay, in school. And basically, your background is also really interesting. There's a story to tell there, I think. And maybe I'll let you do it. But where who your great grandmother was, right? Her origins, and then your grandfather and what he did, and also your father, actually, who's very interesting. Tan Sri Anwar Abdul Malik, one of the 6 founding members of UMNO. I wonder what he'd say about it today. But, so maybe just in a gist, tell us about Johor, growing up in Johor. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a very proud Johorian, very proud of its food, of its culture, its history, its heritage. Glad I was born in Johor. Very cosmopolitan city. Yeah, because it was just across the causeway from Singapore, very multiracial. And yeah, so my family, very interesting, because my great grandmother, my grandfather's mother, was a slave, an Abyssinian slave that my grandfather, great grandfather, was a scholar, was an Islamic scholar from Muar. And in those days, people moved back and forth between Malaya and Mecca. Yeah. And so he would spend 6 months of the year in Mecca, 6 months in Muar, and he bought a slave from the slave market, and I guess fancied her, and freed her and married her and brought her back to Johor.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah. So that was his wife, and they gave birth to only one child, and that was my grandfather, very big man who had big feet, very tall, imposing, and who ate a lot, who ate ghee. My father said he ate ghee in his rice every meal. Hot rice with ghee melted in it. Then of course,
it tastes good, Zai. It tastes good. I do that too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love ghee, and that's why
I know.
my loves ghee and all the fattening food. And then of course my father was my grandfather was a lawyer, a Sharia lawyer. So he traveled all over Johor to represent his clients, and he married 6 times. He had in total 6 wives. It seems he went to the different districts and he would marry a woman. And the way he told his first wife, which was my father's mother, that he had taken another wife, was to bring home some of the new wife's clothes into his suitcase. And so supposedly my grandmother was this Istri Soleha, very obedient, good wife, who just unpacked his clothes and put them away in the cupboard. But my auntie, the youngest auntie, and I'm supposed to have taken after her, would raise hell and scold him. And it seems he would take the firewood and, chase her around the house to beat her because she was the one who objected, So, my father was the eldest child of all his marriages. And of course, my father was one of the founding members of UMNO, with Dato' On, Tan Sri Haji Noor, the first Speaker of Parliament, in that one big fateful meeting in Muar. And my father was the one who came out with the UMNO is named UMNO and has an English name because of my father.
Oh, wow. That's
because of
one for the history books.
Yeah, he was very inspired by the United Nations. He was a big fan of Churchill and read a lot about Churchill, about World War II and all that, but he was inspired by the formation of the United Nations to unite the nations of the world together after World War II. And he and Dato' On and the founders of UMNO wanted to unite the Malays all over the Malay Peninsula, because the Malays were divided and owed their loyalty to the sultans and to the state. So they were known as orang Kedah, orang Johor, orang Negeri Sembilan, orang Selangor, but never Malayans, And so they wanted to unite all the Malays together, of course, to oppose the Malayan Union, the British project of the Malayan Union. So in short, that's the history. So he called it United Malays Organization. And when UMO was launched in the Sultan Sulaiman Club in 1946 in Selangor, in KL, Zabah added the word national. So it became UMNO.
Fantastic. That is really one for the history book, Zai. But there was another interesting thing I read about you, which is that your great-grandfather was an Islamic scholar.
My grandfather.
Yes. Yeah. Or your grandfather. Sorry, your grandfather.
Yeah.
And you used to have religious
it was my great-grandfather.
It was your great-grandfather.
Who spent half the year in Mecca and half the year.
Yeah. And you had an Islamic education. Yeah, you went to Islamic school every day. Am I right? Yeah.
I spent from standard 3 in Johor in those days, and I guess still now. You go to regular school in the morning or in the afternoon, and then you go to Agama school for 2 hours. And at that time, Agama school was from standard 1 to standard 6, and then you enter special class has to become an Agama teacher. And if you fail your Agama at that time, you don't get promoted to the next standard.
Oh, wow.
So I passed, and I was a very good student. I was a top student, among the top students. But my standard 5, I failed. So after that, I didn't want to go to standard 6 and then go to class has and the idea of becoming an Agama teacher. No. So
interesting.
So 5 years of Agama school,
Wow. Yeah. Yes. No, it's good to know, Zai, because everyone thinks you just started Sisters in Islam with absolutely no knowledge whatsoever. So just to put that right,
it's precisely because I have knowledge of Islam, and because of the Islam I grew up with was a beautiful, compassionate, just religion that I just got so outraged at the kind of Islam that began to emerge in Malaysia, which was just so different from the Islam I knew and the Islam I learned and the Islam I grew up in.
And that you loved, yes. So, So, okay, Marina, at the other end of the peninsula, that's where you were born.
Yes.
In Kedah. Mm-hmm. Did you have as colorful a child? Were you naughty and all that, like Zai, or not?
No, I was a very good child. No, I coming from the other end of the country, and we orang Kedah, we're much more. I think. This generalization, but I do. People have said this often, but Kedah people tend to be very reticent and very quiet and not so outgoing, despite the fact that we have so many prime ministers from there. But no, I grew up in a small town, Alostar, went to the local convent school and wasn't particularly, smart or anything, but okay, So, but it was a very, very pleasant childhood, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. No, you don't have to tell us who your father is. So if people don't know that yet, well, that's too bad. But okay, you studied international relations. That was in 1979. But in 2021, you went back. This is last year. No, This year.
A couple
This
years
year
ago,
you
yeah.
qualified, but you started your
2018.
course, correct, in a
Yeah.
master's degree in creative writing and
Yes.
creative non-fiction, right, at University of
Yes.
East Anglia. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's very interesting, and I'll circle back to that a little bit later. But Zai, where you are concerned, you've got interesting qualifications as well. You actually completed journalism at the Mara Institute of Technology in Shah Alam. And then you did a master's at Boston University, and then international law and diplomacy in the Fletcher School of Law, Tufts University. So both of you have very, very interesting both childhood stories to tell, I'm sure, as well as your qualifications. But there's one thing, Zai, that I noted, all right, and that is when you were in UITM, Ibrahim Ali was there as well, was your classmate. So tell us the story behind that.
Well, yeah, well, I didn't plan to have him.
Okay, of course not.
Yeah. From young, I wanted to be a journalist. It was something I was fixated on. I wanted to travel, see the world. I wanted to write. I was addicted to news because my father was addicted to news. Listen to the BBC every day on the hour, by the hour.
Oh, wow.
I'm one of those who can listen to the same news over and over again, like my father. And read the newspapers. He subscribed to the Straits Times, to Utusan Melayu, to Malay, 3 newspapers a day, plus Life magazine, Reader's Digest, Day One Sastra. So I grew up with just news, imbued with news. So I was determined to be a journalist because I wanted to see the world, actually. And of course, Ibrahim Ali was just a classmate, but this was a student rebellion days, the student demonstrations in the early 1970s, and so he became a leader. He was a student leader. So he led the demonstrations, and we of course supported the demonstrations. We were all like going out into KL and all that to demonstrate, and of course he was detained under the ISA.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
And when he was detained, he wasn't a very good student because he was busy with student activism. When he was detained under ISA, us, the students and the lecturers, supported him by giving him all our notes, shared with him our notes, and he passed the exam. I was thinking maybe he had continued, he might not have passed the exams, but because he was under detention, he actually passed and graduated. So that's
Yeah, but has he forgotten that, or I mean, does he have? Well, it's a good reminder anyway.
I don't see him. I'm not a fan of his, I'm not a fan of his politics, as you can imagine. So I really don't. I don't keep in touch.
You don't keep in touch. Okay.
No,
so
not at all.
Marina, both of you actually have many meeting points as I was going through your CVs. The first one is that both of you write. You were actually a journalist with the New Straits Times, and Marina has got a column, with the Star. You also have a column, I know, Sharing the Nation, which we all wait for, by the way, and we also wait to read yours, Marina. But I just wonder, actually, do you see a difference between journalism of the past, before social media made its appearance, with journalists now? I mean, do you both, maybe Marina, you can start by answering that. Do you think that has changed? Yeah.
Well, I started on my career actually in writing for a magazine. Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, I was a writer before I was a columnist. I mean, the column came much later in life, actually. And I was housed in the Straits Times building on the top floor, but I used to go down. And in those days, they had real journalists as editors and things. They had people like Nordin Sopi and people like that who had standards, who had a real idea of what journalism is all about. And nowadays, it drives me mad actually when I read articles where the grammar is not right or the words are used wrongly. And then on top of that, the whole shallowness of a lot of the writing. I mean, Zai and I, we both read, the New York Times and things like that, and so we always have a basis for comparison. And maybe it's too huge a gap, and maybe it's not entirely fair, but still, you feel like, why can't we write like that? Why can't we be more in depth? And that's one of the things that I learned when I went to do my master's, because creative nonfiction is really like all the sort of feature articles you see in the New York Times or the Guardian, long essays that really try and dig deep into an issue, and talk about, give you more perspective, more color, and everything. And that's what I find sadly lacking. And I know they teach mass comm. I know so many young people who are doing mass comm, but I think they all want to go into PR, I think, and broadcasting and whatever, and not really journalism. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, there has been a change. And I probably, social media, everything is compacted, right? Everything is
Truncated. Yeah,
short,
everything is brief. Yeah, correct. And
Yeah.
and they
because
don't have patience,
that's
maybe. Yeah.
and people's attention span have reduced so much that
Yeah.
it's, you are having to cater to that all the time. You're always looking for clickbait headlines and things like that. And really, I think the whole craft of writing is gone. It's really, just
Yeah.
destroyed by that.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you agree with
absolutely.
that?
I've
Mm.
always subscribed to newspapers. I've always had my daily papers delivered to me until last year. I just couldn't stand it anymore. Like there's just nothing to read, so I just stopped. I just stopped reading the newspapers, except like Marina said, I subscribe to the New York Times. Then I read a lot of Guardian articles, of course, long articles, London Review of Books, New York
Yep.
Review of Books. I mean, just amazing, brilliant writing, analysis, and you learn so much. When I read, I want to learn new information,
Things.
new facts,
Correct.
new analysis, yeah, not
And I
gossip
remember,
opinion.
correct. I remember when I wrote for the New York Times once, the amount of research they do into what you
Yeah.
say.
Fact
They don't let
checking.
you print it there unless they are satisfied it's factually correct. And I
Yeah.
think the other
Yeah.
thing I hate, the kind of reporting I hate, is
Mm.
X said this and Y said this,
Yes.
and then there's no
Yeah.
conclusion. There's
I
no
know. I
checking
know.
whether what X said is right and Y said is right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no
I
grilling, Yeah.
there's no, and I was listening to a webinar the other day with some of our local media CEOs, and one of them says, "Oh, we always try to be unbiased and all that." But I think nowadays, just neutrality isn't very good, because if
Yeah.
neutrality means giving a platform to people who are really horrible,
Yeah.
then what are you doing but amplifying their voices? I think you have to take a
Mm,
stand. So this whole thing about unbiasedness or neutrality, to
mm,
me, is a little bit of a fake argument. It's a fake cover,
mm, mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
for them,
True.
pushing some sort of,
But to be fair, we
nasty
have some
agenda.
really good journalists. But I think perhaps because of the consumerism and the manner in which it's consumed, they're just not able to go to the depth which they would like to. But I tell you, there was one investigative journalism is the other thing that's lacking here. But do you remember
Yeah.
there have been a few investigative journalist type articles which have been very, very good, actually.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
remember the graves of the,
Yeah. The border,
who crossed the border,
border. Yeah.
correct?
The smuggling. Yeah. Yeah. That was
Smuggling,
amazing reporting,
right?
actually.
And
Yeah.
even and actually one
Mm.
MDB. I mean, the work that the Edge
Correct.
did on the
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
MDB.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are capable of it. So,
Mm.
that's something that we
Mm.
need to think about. So,
Mm.
okay, what about censorship? Do they censor your articles a lot?
Me,
My God.
not so much like I think in the 25 years,
Yeah.
and I used to write every 2 weeks, right? So that's quite a lot of columns, I must say that the ones that they've really refused to publish have been very few. I think 4 or 5. So it's not so bad, but they do get uncomfortable, and usually around election time, then they'll come and take me out to tea, and they say, "Can you please tone it down?" And I know, I'll
Yeah.
write what I want, then it's your problem.
Yeah.
So, but nowadays, what's happened is that I'm only once a month on Sundays, on the last Sunday of every month, and because now the Star is subscription based online, so I'm only read by people who have a subscription to the Star, which also then reduces my audience actually. It's behind a
Okay.
paywall. So
Right.
it's in a way it's a different kind of censorship. So they're braver. They let me say what I want online because they know not many people are going to read it. And sometimes they only have it online and not in the print paper. That's the way they do it. So they don't actually cut anything I say. They
I
just
see.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's a kind of a subtle censorship, really. But do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah. It's a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've stopped writing really, and of course there were lines and certain phrases
Yeah.
that I use that we have to negotiate. So I'm always negotiating with them, but I've really given up. I just got tired of, I feel that I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, and nothing is changing. So I just gave up. So I don't have
Yeah.
my column anymore, actually. Yeah.
Okay, but could I ask you this? Is it possible that if you wrote in Bahasa, for example, you may actually reach a wider... I actually don't know why they're censoring you in English, because they normally don't bother if you say things
Yeah.
in English, right?
Yeah.
They're more worried about it if you say it in Bahasa. So I don't know why they even try to do that,
Yeah.
actually. So,
Well,
I mean,
all our friends keep telling us that you need to say all these things in Bahasa,
I
Uh,
know
but I can't write in Bahasa. My
as well.
Bahasa,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
is really bad. So I just, and even like I've tried to have my columns translated because people say I should
It's
translate
never
my
the
column.
same.
It's never the same. I've never really been happy with the quality of the translation. The nuances are gone, and yeah. I wish I have equally a good command of the Malay language, but like our generation, we went to an English school and learned
Yep.
everything in English, and my
Yeah.
Bahasa teacher hated me and failed my Malay essay. I had the same Bahasa teacher for 4 years. Every week we had to write an essay, and she failed my essay every single week for 5 years, except for 1 week on the advantages and disadvantages of television. In Form 4, she gave me 5 upon 10. The rest is 3 upon 10, 4 upon 10. And she hated me because I talked too much in class and I questioned her and challenged her.
Naughty,
Yeah,
you were
I
naughty.
went through school about naughty and all that, because I went through school just asking questions all the time and
Yeah,
being
but
a
that's
really naughty student. So there were teachers who liked me, and there were teachers like my Bahasa teacher who couldn't stand that I talk too much.
Most teachers don't.
yeah, most teachers
Yeah,
don't.
that's
Most teachers
They
don't.
don't like.
Okay, now I'm going to move
Yeah.
to your activism, actually. Again, another meeting point, and where I met you guys, okay? And starting with you, Marina, you set up the AIDS Council in 1993, and you were there from 1993 to 2005.
Yeah, actually,
Now,
I didn't set up the AIDS Council nor the
okay,
foundation. They existed before me.
okay.
So I got
Thanks for
invited
that correction. Okay,
to
yeah.
join. Yeah,
You were invited to join. Okay, sorry.
yeah.
Yes, okay, I got that wrong. But what I'd like to know is, look, in 1993, all right, today there's already such an anti LGBT, sentiment, but it must have been much worse in 1993. And the fact that you were actually trying to help, one aspect of the fight against AIDS was to help the LGBT community, as well as to help those who, who contracted AIDS in whatever different ways they did. Was it a problem? Because they always associated in those days AIDS with homosexuality. Was that a problem?
Actually, I think it was less of a problem then than now. And
Okay,
I'll tell
really?
you why. I'll tell you
Yeah.
why. Because in the very early days, the Ministry of Health used to have posters which were very, very frank about how AIDS, how HIV was spread, and they would clearly say men who have sex with men, and they would very clearly say. I mean, I hope they kept copies of those, but we actually did
Oh,
have
I wish they
those.
had. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, yes, and our primary problem was actually drug use, injecting drug use. The people
Correct.
who were getting infected in Malaysia were primarily drug users.
Drug users. Yes,
There
I'm
were
aware of that.
some men, but and certainly the stigma derived from the Western idea of HIV, and at one time it was called gay-related infectious disease, but that was quickly changed to acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, because then they realized that it wasn't just gay people who were getting it. But actually, in the early days, we had some of that, but it wasn't as bad as now, because there was no real government push against LGBT in the beginning. But I tell you what changed all that. What changed all that was 1998, when Anwar Ibrahim was accused of sodomy.
Ah,
And that
yes.
let loose a lot of homophobic, um, attitudes and things like that. I remember Ibrahim Ali
Politics.
started something called PASTRA, which was an
That's
anti-gay
right.
thing. And as soon as I heard that he had a press conference to announce that, then I immediately spoke up. I was already president of the AIDS Council, and I said, this is rubbish. And gay people have been at the forefront of the fight against AIDS and all that, and we shouldn't be prosecuting them. And that got shut down immediately. But it really, I think, gave leeway to a lot of people to become more homophobic. And that has continued until today. To me, I think it's really like almost like low-hanging fruit, right? Picking on the weakest, the most marginalized people in our society. Yeah.
Yeah, no. In fact, that movement was the intention was to wipe out homosexuals, as our research shows. I mean, who
I,
speaks
I
that
mean,
way, right?
I mean, you don't even know who is and who isn't. For
I
God's sake,
know.
how do you test?
That's
So
why I'm not a friend of Ibrahim Ali.
Yeah, I know. I can
yeah.
understand why. But you see, for someone who has actually suffered, who fought for the right, for rights, etc., it's very surprising. But actually, maybe not so surprising, because everything is dictated by politics here, really. And so just on the LGBT issues, Marina, you have been outspoken. We've all been outspoken. I'm wondering actually that whether things are worse for them now than they were before. I'm just, because
Oh,
as
absolutely.
you say, yeah, every time they need
Absolutely.
a distraction, they focus
Yeah.
on this because they
You
think that gives
yourself,
them
Andy,
credibility.
when
Sorry?
you were supposed to open Sexuality
Sexuality,
Merdeka,
correct.
how this was the birthday.
Ibrahim Ali as well, by the way. Ibrahim Ali. Yeah. All
and
three of us
that-
have had.
But that was an excuse, right? Again, it was a distraction. It was an excuse. They were trying to
It
find a
was.
way to get you as head of Bersih, and then they
Correct.
happened to come across this thing, and they went for it, And I had opened it the year before you, and nothing had happened. But then it became it's really gotten worse. It's particularly gotten worse for trans people, because they're the most visible. And the crazy thing is that we've had trans people among us
Yes.
forever. And
Yes.
you see them in villages, you see them at
Correct.
weddings, they're the ones who do your makeup and
Makeup.
everything,
Yeah,
and
correct.
it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
But now they've become like the targets for so much hate and violence, and
Oh, there are
it's really
murders.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
there
I
have
mean,
been a lot of murders.
I grew up in JB, and we just see the trans people all the time, in the neighborhood, and yeah, like Marina said, at weddings and all that. And I always felt that they were very much accepted and loved by
Yeah.
the family.
Yeah.
So there was acceptance in the Malay culture of trans people. Because God, there is a bit of God made them that way. It's not their fault. So they were readily accepted, within the community. But yeah, now it's the politics. It's all about politics.
It
How do you?
is,
Yeah,
and you know what? It's bipartisan politics.
yeah,
Yep.
It's not confined to the government. It's also
No.
there
mm,
in opposition,
Of
in
course.
supposedly
yeah,
our side,
yeah,
and it's very sad. It's very sad.
But-
I wrote my master's dissertation on the
Yes.
transgender community, and I talked about an occasion a long time ago when I went to a friend's, her my best friend's uncle's birthday party, at a local club, like recreational club, and they brought out the paper dolls, the local paper dolls, the paper
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dolls,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yes.
entertainment troupe, which is
Of course.
all
Yes.
trans. And this was an entirely Malay group, yeah, a Malay family. And they were so like, there was no censure, or, they were not outraged. They loved it. And the men were getting up and dancing with these women, and the women were also cheering. And we've come such a long way from that. It's really sad, the way they're going on now, the way they have, harassed Sajad. For
yeah,
what? For being successful,
mm,
actually, for being
mm,
a successful business person, which somehow it negates their stereotype, right? How can
Yeah.
someone be successful and rich
Yeah.
when they're like
mm.
that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
God
I
should
think
be punishing Sajjad instead of
correct.
counting him
Yeah, she should be
successful.
miserable and in the streets and
Miserable.
all that, but
Correct.
she's not.
Yeah, yeah,
No, but you know what? I think the basic problem is that these people make it sound like they have chosen this lifestyle. It's a chosen lifestyle. It's not
mm,
something they were born with.
mm,
And there lies the problem.
yeah,
And you have medical people talking like that too, by the way, which is what really shocks me. Educated people who speak in
mhm,
that fashion. But I think what is really, I said to you all yesterday, look, we all come from fairly privileged backgrounds, but the one thing that we all have in common is we can't stand bullies.
mm,
We
Yeah,
can't stand it when
yeah,
marginalized people are bullied. It's like what happened to the
mm,
migrants,
mm,
the refugees during COVID, the manner in which they're treated. How can you be a leader when you don't have 1 ounce of humanity in you?
mm.
And I
yeah,
that I feel very strongly about that. But they carry on, they carry on,
Yeah,
and every time they carry on, we must call it out.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
tweet every time they
mm,
go after and bully these communities. I make sure I a flurry of
mm,
tweets follow to say, look, does
mm.
that make you feel really big and strong and
Yeah,
what? Okay,
yeah, exactly. I mean, what do
right?
you get out of bullying people much weaker than you? Pick on someone your own size.
Exactly. They
mm,
never do,
mm,
frankly. So we
No.
we have to continue speaking up. I think we must. I think a lot of people are so overwhelmed with the way in which you send police officers off to Thailand chasing after this. So everyone keeps quiet because they're
Yeah.
afraid to speak. But I don't think we should be. I
yeah,
think that's
yeah,
exactly when we should speak up.
yeah,
So that's one of the things that has always bothered me in this
mm,
country. And I mean, look, coming into Sisters in Islam and how you both came together on that as well, actually. So maybe, maybe Zai, you can tell us a little bit about that. Why sisters in Islam?
Why? Well, this was, the rise of political Islam in Malaysia, the rise of conservatism. I've always been proud to be a Malaysian Muslim, a Nusantara, someone from the Nusantara heritage, where it's the Islam of openness, of compassion. We've never had a history of segregation between men and women in the way we practice Islam. We never had a history of wearing the hijab, of the burqa, there's no segregation. It's really, and that's how I grew up, a God of love, a God of justice, a religion of justice. And I grew up, with an utter belief that God is just. I cannot believe, why would God be God if God is unjust? I can't fathom what kind of God is an unjust God, right? So I was just so outraged. And I grew up with very strong sense of identity of my religion, my culture, who I am, where I'm from, and all that. So I was just so outraged as an adult to be confronted over radio, television, all these charamas at private homes with this idea that God is like, because women were going to the Sharia courts, to the religious department to complain that the husbands were beating them or that husbands had taken a second wife. And they're told, but that's his right in Islam. Every injustice against women, is according to God. Teaching justified in the name of God, and that's the man's right in Islam. He has a right to beat you. He has a right to 4 wives. He has a right to divorce you at will. He has a right to command obedience from you. He has a right to have sex with you 24/7. You can't say no to anything. Like, what is this Islam? This is not the Islam I grew up with. And so just feeling that outrage at what was happening. And there was this very well-known preacher, woman preacher, who my friends were telling me, and she goes only to rich people's homes, middle-class homes in Damansara and Canning Hills and all that. And she was saying, if your father is downstairs in the bedroom downstairs and Nazar in his last breath, he's calling for you. He wants to see you. You're upstairs with your husband, and your husband says, no, you should not go down. You cannot go down to see your father, your dying father. Then you don't go down. You have to obey your husband. I was just so outraged to hear such stories. And of course, at the same time, PAS had come into power, and the kinds of interviews and statements PAS was making, that women are inferior to men, women shouldn't work, women should stay at home. So all these things was like just pummeling us, this cruel, misogynistic, patriarchal, unjust Islam. And so that's really when the few of us, felt that we really, really needed to come together and create a public voice to challenge this unjust understanding, unjust interpretation of Islam. But of course, who are we looking like this? No knowledge of Arabic, didn't go to, Al-Azhar, not covered up to speak about Islam, right? So we knew knowledge was important. So that was when we, went back to the Quran and really decided whether does the Quran really say all these things about women and men's treatment of women and men's rights, and women are secondary and inferior to men. So we were lucky at that point when we actually sisters began. The genesis was as part of the Association of Women Lawyers. I can't remember.
Is that so? Yeah, I was there, but I can't remember that. Yeah, I was there too.
So Farida was the president of the Association of Women Lawyers, and Meroon was the subcommittee, the Sharia law subcommittee. So the first thing we wanted to deal with at that time, we were part of AWL, was to deal with the issue of implementation of the Islamic family law. Because women were complaining that they had such difficulty trying to get a divorce, delays and all that, and the service that they were getting from the religious, very unsympathetic service from the religious department. So we were dealing with that. And we had a conference on the implementation of the Islamic family law. And the law students at University of Malaya helped us, because they were Maroon students, Arwah Maroon, to help us with the conference with the Prime Minister's department. Yeah, the Women's Affairs department at the time was Women's Affairs department. So that was the first conference we had. But as we went on, we decided that dealing with law alone was not enough, and that we really had to do what's the source of these discriminatory laws. Everything is in the name of Islam. And so we felt that we needed, and we can't push for the kind of changes we wanted because this is Islam, it's sacrosanct, it's divine law, it cannot be changed. And so we decided, look, we need to go back to the source of the law. What is the source of the law? Islam, the Quran. And so we decided that we needed to read the Quran. To find out what does the Quran say about all these things, about man's right to divorce the wife at will, to have 4 wives, to beat the wife, and all that. And so that's when we decided to read the Quran. And when we decided to read the Quran, it just so happened that one of the members, Rose Ismail, knew Amina Wadud when she was on a fellowship in Michigan. And Amina had just come to Malaysia to teach the Quran at the International Islamic University. And so we invited Amina we were meeting in my house every week. And so we invited Amina to my house, and we wanted to go through the Quran with her and really find out, because she just did her PhD on Quran and women, and she knows classical Arabic. And so we wanted her to teach us, and it was so interesting. When we went to the Quran, the lawyers all dropped out. Except for one lawyer, the rest of the AWL lawyers all dropped out. That had organized the conference with us, they all dropped out. So it was left, the 9 lawyers except for one, left behind. So that really became the 8 of us who founded Sisters in Islam in 1988, and that was when we read the Quran and discovered what the verse on polygamy said. When the verse on polygamy, it was a shock to us to find that the verse on polygamy said that if you fear you cannot do justice, marry only one, and that will be best for you, to prevent you from doing injustice. Can you beat that? That's in our Quranic text. And how come we didn't know about it? So for us, the issue is, who is the issue of authority? Who gets to decide? This is Islam. Marry 4 is Islamic teaching, and marry 1 shall be pushed aside and forgotten and not be used as a source of law. Who decided that? So for us, it's the issue of authority. It's not the issue of this is God's will. So the message of the Quran is to prevent injustice, to do justice. Why isn't that message of justice, of compassion, of kindness be the source of law? Why? The idea that men have authority over women, that men are superior to women, be define the male-female relationship. So it was discovering this incredibly liberating and spiritually uplifting message in the text that then we decided we have to go public. We cannot bring change by speaking around within 4 walls. We needed to go public. And because 2 of us were journalists, Rose and I were journalists, we felt the best way to go public was to use the letters to the editor column. And see, we wrote the first letter to the editor and on polygamy, where there was a court judgment, a Sharia appeal court, Selangor Sharia appeal court, very progressive judgment that basically overturned this man's polygamous marriage, right? And so we welcome that judgment. We use that judgment as the entry point to welcome it and to present our understanding of the verse on polygamy, that actually the Quran says marry only 1. That will be best for you, and that should be the guidance. So that's the rest is history.
The rest is history, but that's a very interesting, and everyone must understand actually where you all were coming from when you started Sisters. But you joined in, Marina, at the beginning or a bit later on, or
no, much later. Only in 2009. Okay. Because originally, I think when Sis started, there wasn't a membership sort of thing. Azai did ask me quite early on, but I was, busy with the AIDS Council, and I felt like I would never have time. So it was only after I left the AIDS Council and had time to do my own thing and then she asked me again. I said, okay.
Yeah, no,
So,
I
yeah.
invited you in 1993, Marina, when we first expanded, because it was 8 of us for a long, long time. Then in 1993, we began our first expansion by inviting a few more people to join us. And we were always very scared about opening up where anybody could join because of the nature of the work that we were doing. So we really invited those, we felt we could trust and who we know that believe in the kind of Islam that we believe in equality, injustice, and compassion and kindness in Islam. So I invited you. Yeah, you say you will always support us, but you were very busy with
Yeah, 93 was when I first joined the AIDS Foundation. I had no idea what was ahead of me. So probably just as well, actually, I kind of needed to grow up and and then join. Yeah.
But Marina, you made a statement where you called it apartheid, right? The way in which Muslim women are treated. And this is what you said: in our country, there is an insidious growing form of apartheid among Malaysian women, that between Muslim and non-Muslim women, as non-Muslim women catch up with women in the rest of the world, Muslim women here are only going backwards. So do you want to explain why you made that statement? And you sound so frustrated actually when you made that statement.
Well, I mean, some people got really triggered by the word apartheid. There, they really got offended, because it's because we think of South Africa when
Of
we talk
course.
about it. But how else do you describe it? We all live under the same constitution, which says that we are all equal under the law, and yet we have this dual system. Well, we're not supposed to call it dual system, but we are treated differently. Women particularly are treated differently. And while non-Muslim women in our country were gaining more rights under the civil law, civil family laws and all that, we were getting less and less. I mean, non-Muslim women once, their husbands could take any number of wives, right? Both legal and common law wives and all that. And the law put a stop to it.
Yes,
Whereas
the law did.
ours just continued and in fact made it easier for men to do that. So to me, I thought, like, how can we live in the same country and be treated differently just because we are of different religions? And I mean, you could have relatives who are non-Muslim, and yet they have somehow more rights than you do. It doesn't make sense to me. And to me, that mirrored exactly what was happening in South Africa at the time, apartheid. So I labeled it apartheid.
It made global news. Marina got several interviews about the international press.
I know, whoa,
No, but that's amazing. Then you moved on to Musawah, which is actually the global movement, right? Zaid, you want to quickly just explain that so our listeners will understand
it's interesting, the work that, because CIS really are the pioneers. Nobody else, no women's group in any part of the world
I'm
was
surprised.
engaging. Yeah, I know, was engaging with Islam from a rights perspective in the very public way that CIS was doing. The letters to the editor, the public statements, the press conferences, the memorandums to the government. Nobody else was doing that. So there was a lot of interest in the work that we were doing. But at the same time, there was a lot of opposition as well, not from feminists, not just from non-Muslim Western feminists, from Muslim feminists as well, who felt that we were treading a dangerous path, that religion has no role. So, strong secular Muslim feminists from the Arab world in particular and South Asia. It's interesting, the Southeast Asians understand, non-Muslims and fellow activists understand what we're doing, but to many in the leading feminists of the Arab world and South Asia, they felt we were treading dangerous ground, that religion has no role to play in public life, never mind that the source of their laws too, is Islam. So how can you say religion has no role to play? But I guess the idea is that we shouldn't in any way legitimize religion. And by saying there's equality, there's justice, there's compassion, there's kindness, there's a possibility of reform in Islam, we are legitimizing Islam in the public space. And so they felt it was a dangerous strategy, for a dangerous path for us to take, because religion should be removed from the public space. And we felt this is totally unrealistic. We live in countries where religion is important to Muslims, to the citizens, and where religion is a source of law. And if you don't engage and challenge, you're going to lose out. And so our work, in spite of all the attacks against us from the Islamists, from the government, from the feminists, we continued.
You persevered, yes.
Yeah, we persevered. We never, ever backed down. And there was, Islam hasn't gone away. So everybody felt, with development, with progress, with prosperity, Islam will become irrelevant. Religion, that's the development theory, right, of the 1950s, that religion becomes irrelevant as modernity gathers pace. But of course, that's not true. Religion is still so important. And so there was growing interest that many feminists then felt that, look, we've got no choice. We need to understand Islam better. We need to engage with Islam. So there was growing interest in the work that we were doing from women's groups all over the world. And basically, because of cis history and cis leadership, everybody felt, look, only Sisters in Islam could bring everybody together at the global level. So that's what Musawah did, that is Sisters in Islam's initiative at the global level, by bringing women's groups from the Muslim world, from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East, and from the West as well. Muslim.
That's amazing. There's nearly 50 countries, nearly 50 countries.
Attended the launch of Musawah in 2009, which is like a really, really amazing launch. 5 days.
What a feat.
That's
and amazing what you've achieved.
Actually, so we brought everybody together to launch this global movement for equality and justice for women in the Muslim family. And it's been 12 years now, and we just had our first regional Sub-Saharan Africa meeting just a week ago, and bringing groups together in Sub-Saharan Africa, in the MENA region, in South Asia and Southeast Asia, to really create this voice and campaign for an end to discriminatory Muslim family laws, and really building voice and building knowledge to really speak out, and challenge this unjust, cruel, misogynistic, discriminatory narrative of Islam, and to promote an understanding of Islam that upholds equality and justice.
Yeah. So I also wanted to ask, because now that you've had, you've got 46, nearly 50 member countries, etc. How do we compare by way of progress towards eradicating misogyny and so on,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a mixed bag, I think in some ways, I think the public space is amazing in Malaysia, actually, when it comes to talking about Islam. Yes, you get attacked, you get criticized. But
doesn't matter,
Yeah, the space does exist. And I think what's wonderful is that, in the early days of Sisters in Islam, we were the only ones speaking out on Islam and human rights and women's rights and LGBT rights and all that. But now, I think once the horse has bolted from the stables, you can't close the doors anymore.
You can't.
And more people are speaking. For me, that's the biggest success of Sisters in Islam, that more voices are speaking up, more groups have emerged in Malaysia, in the region, all over the world, to speak out and challenge that
some of these notions. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
And so people have more courage, people have more knowledge, people challenge the religious authorities. Nobody's scared anymore. I think that is great. What G25 has been doing, is amazing. And individuals are speaking up, people like you, others as well. And not just because sisters don't believe that only Muslims have a right to speak out.
Well, this is the other thing. Yeah, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, as citizens of a Muslim country where laws and practices are influenced in, made by the name of Islam, everyone is affected in different ways and everyone should speak out. It is not a Muslim issue, it's a national issue and all should speak out. So I think that is really, really, really good, and this change is now happening in the rest of the Muslim world, and the credit really goes to sisters in Islam for really having that courage and that strategy, to open up the space for debate and to create this public voice and challenge the ways Islam is used as a source of law and public policy.
Marina, do you want to jump in there and say anything and add anything?
Well, I just wanted to say that actually in the AIDS world, a parallel thing was happening, because in the early days, especially, for those of us working out here in Southeast Asia, in many countries in the world, it's not just limited to Islam, but most of us were finding that religion matters a lot to the ordinary person.
Yes.
And they take their cues from a lot of religious leaders. And if religious leaders said the wrong thing, then they will, go along with that. So when you have religious leaders who say that people with HIV should be put on an island and everyone else follows, right? So very early on, actually about the same time that all this was happening with sisters and all that, some of us also started talking about bringing in faith communities and religious leaders into the AIDS work. And there was resistance. There was real pushback. And I noticed that the pushback actually came from people in countries where the religious authorities have been very, very oppressive. For instance, Latin America, where the church is really, and also parts of the Middle East. They really pushed back. They didn't want to have anything to do with religion. And so we had to, do the same kind of work and say, you need to have, because people need this. People, to change attitudes towards more compassion, more humane work, you need to bring in these religious leaders. And after a while, actually, the whole system changed, and people started bringing in more of the faith-based communities and things like that, and there was a more faith-based approach. And even among the Muslim world, there were attempts at holding conferences and bringing religious leaders to talk about HIV/AIDS, and we had a notorious one in 2003, where we had this International Muslim Leaders Conference on HIV/AIDS, where we tried to bring them together with reality. Because yes, they started talking about AIDS, religious leaders, but they were talking among themselves, and it was all theology and very abstract. And then we, all the NGOs and people on the ground, we were talking about religion and the impact on us, on our work. But again, we were talking about ourselves. So we did this conference with the theme When Theology Meets Reality, and it kind of blew up.
Nice.
But I mean, to me, it was a nightmare, and I still think of those 5 days as the worst in my life ever. It really challenged whatever skill I had in leadership to manage it all. But when I look back, I only see the good things, because there was change. Nothing stopped. People carried on. Today, we have a manual produced by Jakim with the Ministry of Health and with the AIDS Council on Islam and HIV/AIDS. We train a lot of grassroots leaders on that, and things were happening in places like Balochistan, for God's sake, and the UN cited us as a best practice because of that. So that kind of, it was worth it in the end.
Wow, but both of you have achieved a lot actually in your in the work that you've done. We don't have a lot of time left, about 15 minutes, but I'm going to ask you, Zai, to very quickly tell us about a very interesting piece of research that SIS did into the psychological effect of polygamy on the children of the marriage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
just summarize it first? Yeah.
Yeah. This is a research that we did about 10 years ago on the impact of polygamy on the
Yes.
family, and
Yeah.
it included children. We interviewed children above the age of 18, and I think what's interesting is that that for many of the children we interviewed, that was the first time anyone had asked them that question.
Really?
They are the forgotten victims, the forgotten consequences of this selfish behavior of their fathers, and it brings tears to my eyes thinking about that, because nobody asked them how they felt. And it's when we talk to them, say, this is the first time I'm talking about this. Anybody has asked, what I thought about it. And I remember once on TV when we were talking about this research with my colleague Norani Othman, the interviewer, the father had abandoned the mother because of polygamy. And like after the session was over, he, of course, and he's been estranged from his father for so long. He was already in his 20s and hadn't talked with the father for years. And the father wanted to get to, contact him again. And he said, after listening to our discussion on the research, he said, I'm going to talk with him. I'm going to ask him, why did he do that to us? Why did he do that to the family? And it was also very interesting that, when we asked the children, and we only interviewed children who were above the age of 18, would they recommend polygamy, as a form of marriage? Would they want to be in a polygamous marriage? Over 80% of them said no, because of the unhappiness. And we did videos where little 8-year-old children are so unhappy because they know their father is not there. So children of first wife, children of second wives, it made no difference.
No difference.
Both sets of children,
Wow.
from the first wife and the second wife, said it's a bad thing for the well-being of the family, because the father is just not there, disappeared, not in their lives, and it was also interesting. I was talking about another research that was done by Merdeka Center about youth in Malaysia and Indonesia, and I can't remember whether there was a third country, about their understanding of Islam. And it was disturbing, that the Malaysian youth was so utterly conservative on every issue: Islamic State, hudud law, all very conservative. But the question on polygamy, the majority, it was the only question where the majority of the youth said they are against polygamy, where they gave a progressive viewpoint. And it's interesting, and I thought that the reason why is because they probably experienced it.
Correct.
They were themselves children of polygamous marriages, or they know friends and family members who are in polygamous situation and who are unhappy. While all the other things is theory, right? Do you believe in the Islamic State? Yes. Do you think the hudud law should be implemented in Malaysia? Yes. Do you think the constitution should change to be based on the Quran? Yes. Everything was yes, but polygamy was no. Why? And I really thought it must be because the rest is theoretical about being a good Muslim. But polygamy is reality, is that lived reality we were talking about. When lived reality clash with this conservative theology that makes no sense to the reality of their lives, they say, no, this is not Islam. This is not what I want, So really it's a very, it is a very harmful practice that's caused so much harm to family well-being. And it's not like the second wife, third wife, fourth wife is like the happy second, third, fourth. No,
it can't be. It can never be, actually. It can never be. It doesn't make sense, right?
And we also had husbands that we interviewed who said they're not happy, so they thought the solution to their unhappy marriage is to take a second wife. They take a second wife and they think that whatever problems will be, no, they're not unhappy and they regret taking a second wife, So is that, the other thing is what we found out as well, because, we asked the question, what's important in a marriage, and communication was one of the issues. I think there were 8 issues. Communication was one of them, and nobody ticked communication, as a priority issue. So the issue of communication between husbands,
they didn't
and
realize
wives,
it's important.
there's incredible lack of awareness of what makes a marriage work. You think you fall in love, time to get married,
and then
time
that's
to
it.
have, you just go headlong without a conscious effort of how do you make this marriage work, right? And to list communication as number 7 or number 8, are you kidding? And you realize in the answers that they gave too, is that lack of communication, the ability to be frank, to share, to communicate with each other, to what makes you unhappy, what makes you happy. None of that takes place.
But Zai, there was one little incident you mentioned about this child who what would you just tell us quickly?
That
Chokes me. Yeah, every time I hear that, my heart breaks, because the psychological effect on these children.
We interviewed this young girl. I think she was maybe about 20, 18 or 20, in Kelantan. She's the child of a second wife. And she told us that she went to see her father to get her tuition money for her college, to pay the fees. And the father asked her, "Makmu siapa?" The father didn't know who is this girl's mother, which wife she belonged to. Can you imagine? And she told us, "My father is nothing but an ATM machine. He's just an ATM machine to me. He's not a father." They have no very, minimal contact with him. The first wife lives nearby, but they don't talk to each other. The children don't communicate. I mean, what kind of a family life is that? It's supposed to be, you get married, you build a family together, but there's no family life. And this poor girl, we had a son we interviewed who was the eldest. He was in his 50s, never got married, because from young he had to take care of his mother and his siblings. He's in his 50s, he still thinks, because the father was not there, so he became the caregiver, the provider. So he felt he needed to take care of all his younger siblings, and he never wanted to get married. We had another case of a son as well, who didn't want to date any woman because he was so worried that he would hurt any girlfriend in the way that his father hurt his mother. It screws up. You want to cry when you listen. I know that. Hurt any woman in the way that Papa hurt you. So he didn't want to go on dates. Because of that. So all this impact on children, nobody cares about. The institution doesn't care. The religious authorities doesn't care. You talk about happy family, whatever, now keluarga, whatever, this new government, But are you looking at the details of how your laws, your practices, your culture, are causing harm to the well-being of the family?
But Marina, why don't you jump in there with a comment? But I'm wondering whether this conversation, we need to have this conversation again. When I say that, not us, but whether this whole issue of the effect on children should be raised again, Zai. There should be another survey or
like
something.
I said, it's boys, girls. So boys
all
as privileged, by this practice, they see harm, they see hurt, they see pain.
Marina, before we go on to our last subject, do you have any input on that? Or
not
really. Except I come from a very non-polygamy supportive family. Put it that way. It's interesting that both Zai and I actually are descended from Islamic officials and scholars. My grandfather, I wouldn't say was a scholar, but he was an Islamic official. He was on the Majlis. He was on the Religious Council of Selangor State.
Oh, that's right. You said,
he was responsible for putting on the conditions, passing the laws that put conditions on polygamy in Selangor State, which made it more difficult for men to take on a wife without the first wife's consent,
Well,
without court approval and
progressive.
everything. Yeah, he was, and he really,
Yeah.
really disapproved of it for all the right reasons,
Yes.
and of his 10 children, only one dared to take on another wife, and that was after he died. I don't think he would ever have tried while my grandfather was still alive. So, I and my mom also married a man who didn't believe in this thing, that didn't believe that it was possible, for anyone to be truly fair to more than one wife. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, this has been a great bugbear, and we've seen the effects of it. We have empirical evidence on the effects of it, and it really, you're right, it should be highlighted again, the impact on children, because nobody really bothers.
No, no, this is the problem, that we have. But the other thing is this, both of you. I mean, I've known you for more than 10 years, and you're great birthday supporters, big plus. And you've always been there for me. I remember the time when I was called up to see the king, and I immediately got a message from Marina saying, do you have a baju kurung? You can come and borrow one from me. You can do this immediately, and then make sure you do this, you do
My
that, and
first
you're
thought,
dressed
right,
this
what
way.
she
And
gonna wear?
correct. And then Zai, I went to your house, and do you remember? And you said to see you, and am I dressed okay? Whatever. And I remember I was quite emotional as well, because it was so stressful, that whole situation. But you guys have always been there for me. And Marina, when Sexuality Merdeka, when they were attacking me, you came for that press conference, and you made sure you spoke, because they were attacking me, right? And when
Yeah.
the birthday, when they had that dance outside my house, I remember Zai coming in, driving in, and turned to them and called them biadab, you stop doing this kind of thing. This entire
Yeah.
bunch of men.
Thugs, they're
um,
thugs.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you know what? We've soldiered together quite a bit, when you think about it, and there's quite a lot that's gone on in our lives. And right now, I know, because we're running out of time, I cannot go into too much detail. But Marina, you do podcasts now, and you have a website called Zafigo, which is about women travelers, and
Yeah.
helping them. And Zai, I know you still do your scuba diving, and you're really quite a daredevil, without a doubt. You love cooking. Um, we're all over 60. I won't give the exact age, but we're all over 60, and I'm thinking, I maybe we should reflect. I don't know, have we done enough for those, for the youngsters? Are we handing them a country that they can be proud of? Are we doing the right things? Are we saving the environment? Have we done enough, and should we do more? And I'm just wondering how you all feel about that, actually, if you have any input on that, and maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing now, actually. Marina, you go first. On your
Well,
podcast.
I think we've done what we can.
Mm.
And we've gotten to an age where we I think we've earned the right to do what we want and do what we like. And I like communicating, and I think everything I do is related to women. So I started Zafigo.com because I I couldn't find information that provided that for women who wanted to travel. I wanted to travel
Yeah.
safely, because I felt that travel was also very gendered. And so that's how I started Zafigo.com in 2014. And it's gotten larger. I have a nice young team, and they have lots of ideas, and I let them do what. And the podcast, and also the kind of talk show that I host, called Hello Zafigo, was really because of COVID, because we couldn't have our annual event, Zafigo X,
Right.
um, I heard someone call it Zafigox yesterday, which was quite funny.
I called it Zelfigo or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Zafigo X, which is modeled after TEDx. Zai has been to one,
Yeah,
and that's
great.
quite a nice event. Yeah, we bring women together to talk ostensibly about travel, but you soon realize that it's about more than that. It's about building. It's about meeting challenges. It's about building confidence in yourself, and doing things that you thought you couldn't do, or you thought that women couldn't do. So it's been great fun. And the podcast is a bit of an indulgence because it's about books, and I love books. I love talking about books. So yeah, I think we've done a lot. I think we've mentored a lot of people, and I think it's time for young women to take over. I was part of an event this morning where we were kicking off a program to train young women advocates on various issues, and yeah, just sort of share your knowledge with them, and then just let them go out into the world and change it. um yeah. So yeah, I think
That's,
we've earned the right. So now I'm doing more of what I want to do.
hold
But
on, you forgot to talk to us about your book.
ah,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I have a book. So I went off to do my creative writing course, master's, partly because I always felt that I only had a first degree and everyone else has got a master's. I needed to add an MA to my name. But also because I've always wanted to write a book from start to finish. I mean, I've had 4 books out, but they were always compilations, so I didn't feel like they were the same thing. And so I went off to do this creative writing course in nonfiction because I thought that's all I could do. I knew how to do. I didn't realize how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. It was great. It really taught me a lot. It taught me to look at writing in a different way, and I wanted to keep it up. And so when I came back, I finished in 2019, and when I came back all of last year, of course, we had so much time at home. I tried to keep up with the writing, and I took another online course and things like that. I really, I didn't want the whole course to go to waste. And then it so happened that a publisher approached me and said, would you like to write a book for us? And we want it to be on your life as the daughter of a prime minister. And I said, oh, that's weird. I've been writing bits on that. And so that's how it came about. That was 1 year ago. I realized that she approached me, and it'll be out this November, which is kind of fast. But yeah, I had a lot of the material ready. So, yep, it's coming. It's coming.
Okay. And it's called.
It's called The Apple and the Tree,
Okay.
which I tell the story of that in the prologue. No, yeah, prologue. It's a quote from my daughter actually.
Oh.
And it talks about it talks about me, but in relation to my dad. It aims to answer everyone's favorite question, which is, what is it like to be Dr. M's daughter? And so I talk about how I grew up, the values I grew up with, and and how I kind of had to find a way to get out of this gigantic shadow,
Hmm.
and the AIDS work and everything. So yeah, and it comes right up to February 2020. So I expect a
Oh.
lot of reaction to the last bits of it.
Oh, okay. That sounds very interesting. But let me ask you this one question before we sign off. Did the apple fall far from the tree?
You'll have to read the book to find
All
out.
right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair
we look
enough.
forward to it, Marina.
We look forward to it, and congratulations,
Get your
Marina.
orders
Zai,
in.
what about you? What is your how round off what you're up to
Yeah,
now?
well,
Yeah.
I've just stepped down as the executive director of Musawah. I'm really, really ready to retire and do my own thing.
Cannot.
I'm I'm tired. I said, I'm a tired old lady. I'm done
no,
with
no, no.
leading groups and making decisions. I don't want to make any decisions anymore. I don't want to lead anything anymore. Yeah. Yeah, and so what I'm doing now this year is like gone, all plans gone awry, of course, because of the lockdown and everything. So I've been indulging in my love for movies, and I've just been watching one movie after another, binge watching Netflix, Prime Video, whatever, Amazon Prime, all these streaming services, watching old movies, new movies, series. So I've been doing a lot of that, and I've really caught on reading novels again because because of work, you just read texts, on Islam, So I'm like, okay, done with all these textbooks. I'm reading novels and really discovering just incredible women writers and reading one novel after another. And I've got 3 writing projects that I've not done anything yet. My mother was a great cook. I mean, she was all of us claim our mother's the best cook. She was the best cook in the world, and that's why my father married her. And I want to put a recipe book together of her recipes, So I want to do that. I want to write a play. I've always wanted to write a play on polygamy. Nice. Yeah, so I'm taking classes with Joko Kata. So she's got these play classes. Yes. So it's really fun. I'm learning a lot, and everything I thought the way I should write, she's like completely undermined it all. No. So that's great. I'm learning a lot of new things from her and the team. And what's my other? Oh, of course, Marina has been asking me, like, put your columns together. All these columns I've written over the years. So actually, that I've just begun to start organizing it thematically, putting them together. At least that's a start. And I really feel it's
well done.
Yeah, I know. I should, because it's a reflection of the period, what was happening at that time, right? So it's a good to have it on record in one source. And I really feel I just want to rest. I just, I feel it's a time for young people to take the lead. And I think it's wonderful that young people are speaking out or organizing. Undi 18 is great. So I'm really, really hopeful that it's the young who is going to continue this work that we began, the spaces we opened up, the voices we created, the issues we raised, that it's really I'm ready, more than ready.
That's where your optimism lies.
Yeah, the baton to the young, because the future really lies with them, and they have the courage now. I think we've opened the doors, opened the space for people to speak out, and now with social media and all that, there's you can't censor anymore, right? And so it's wonderful to see young people speaking out, organizing, and like Marina, I'm happy. To just give talk. So I've been on various training sessions talking with young people, and it's so wonderful to see them interested in the work that we're doing and asking questions about what can they do, how can they organize, and all that is really wonderful. So really, the world, I remain optimistic. I think there's so much good in Malaysia and among Malaysians, the culture, the tradition we've had, the embracing of, our differences, our plurality, that of course the politicians want to, end all that. But I think those roots are really important roots of diversity, of pluralism, of celebrating our differences and our diversity that has enriched us. And I think those roots are still strong, and we need to make it stronger. And I think that's the kind of Malaysia that the young people want. A Malaysia where there is space for everybody, all of us in all our differences and diversity, and there's just so much to share. It's not, Malaysia is just not for one kind of people or one group of people. There is so much and so much good about Malaysia that we can share with everyone.
well said, both of you. And I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, we're so much better with diversity.
Yep.
We do so much better, whether it is in government or wherever we are.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
always perform better with diversity. And that to me is something that is critical. But you know what? Zai, who is the high-spirited, playful, talkative, naughty, I don't think you're disappearing anywhere very very soon. I think all of us, all right, will not be able to keep quiet, all right? So we'll carry on saying our bits, but I agree with you. It is the future of the young, and this is their country now, and they need to call the shots on the
Yeah.
environment, on whatever bothers them, because what bothers them may be different things from, maybe different priorities from what we had. So I mean, it's been a great ride with you guys, but knowing all of us, we're not going to keep quiet lah. We will keep on irritating everyone.
My
Okay.
best to keep quiet.
Thank you so much. We have gone over time, but I honestly think it was ground that was well covered, and I hope our listeners. Well, they may ask for a part 2, by the way. So if they do, we may have to come back. Okay, then. All the best for your book.
Thanks so much,
and all the best to
Abby.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah. See you guys.
Thank you,
Bye.